From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I don't hear anything that says we're going to make a better Nebraska. Do you? No. I don't hear anything about collaborative government. I hear us versus them. And so, frankly, I decided I wanted to be the adult in the room.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 25th season and this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, getting to know Senator Carol Blood. The Democratic gubernatorial candidate is here to share her story on and off the campaign trail. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
You bet. I should say welcome back because, yeah, the last time you were here 5 years ago, so 2017, our topic was farmers markets. And as I was getting ready for today's program, I noticed you are still the volunteer market coordinator in Bellevue. And I have to ask, how on earth are you getting all that done, Carol?
You know, I gotta be honest. I think at the time when I took it over, I had just gotten off the city council. And as an elected official, I see myself more as a steward than a politician. And I think if you're going to be a steward, you have to think of yourself as a vessel, right? So if you're a vessel, you're going to go out into the community, you're going to do things, you're going to talk to people, it fills you up, and then you can be a better voice for them. And the market is so important to our community. I just hate to let it die. And right now we're one of the top 5 markets in the whole state. So we have a lot to be proud of, and it's just a nice way to spend your Saturdays talking to folks, right?
Yeah, and this is not anything different for you. You're a lifelong volunteer. Why is that so important to you?
You know, I know that people say this a lot, but I really live this, is that I believe that one person can and does make a difference. And I have a long list of things that I could show you that indeed just stepping up to the plate and trying things that you're scared of. Fall forward fast, I always say. It makes a difference, and if it's not you, who's it going to be? So don't wait for other people to do it when you can do it yourself. Okay. And if you want to have a better community where you live, or a better state where you live, then you have to participate. So I just, it keeps my heart full. It keeps me motivated, it keeps me strong. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't have a lot of vices, so I have time to volunteer, so.
Well, there you go. We have a graphic that we are going to put up for our viewers. And as we're doing that, in addition to volunteering, what's important to know about Senator Carol Blood?
I'm very pragmatic. I'm a problem solver, to a fault sometimes. If I see a problem, I know there's a solution. I want you to know that family is really important to me, my community is really important to me, and you know, people always say, well, when are you going to sleep? I'll sleep when I'm dead, because it's just so motivating to be involved in your community and to be involved now in politics, because you can create change that can help Nebraskans for decades. How powerful is that when you make someone's life better? You know, it's like Smokey the Bear said, like when you leave your campfire, you got to leave it better than you found it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. And I want to go back to 2008. You talked about political involvement. That's really when it all started. I have to ask, what were you doing at that time, and why the city council?
So I've known since 4th grade that I wanted to be a state senator. Remember how you do the 4th grade tours in grade school? In fact, I remember a newsletter in junior high where I said, when I grow up, I want to be a state senator. I didn't know they made $12,000 at the time, but you know, you're not doing it for a career because it pays well. You're doing it because I hope, because you're passionate about it. But my kids, I had my youngest in high school, and I thought, you know, watching public access television and watching the city council meetings, they were lacking a strategic plan. And that to me means that my city was just writing checks. They tried for 20 years to get a new police department. They had all these things that they kept trying and failing on. And I can remember sitting and watching the council meetings and literally yelling at the TV, like giving them answers. And it's like, you know, I think I could be a better senator if I ran for city council first, because I could learn more about that connection. And so I decided first to run for city council, and we had 7 people in my first primary, and I learned so many things, and obviously went on to win that election.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like sometimes if you want to be good at government, you have to learn every level of government. I think it's really hard to come from the outside and really be effective if you don't have a background of somewhat in government and how it works, especially when it comes to things like budgeting.
Okay, and you worked really hard to become a state senator, right?
I did.
Talk to us about the transition from city council into being a state senator, a 3rd legislative district, right?
Yeah, I felt like it actually made it so much easier for me because I understood how statute played a role in like local government and vice versa. We're a Dillon's rule state, which means that there's really nothing you can do at the level of local government that isn't put into state statute by state government. And a lot of people don't come into the state level and understand that. And so I was really effective my first year. Like you'll hear senators say, yeah, I got 1 or 2 bills passed. I got lots more than that passed my first year. And to be really frank, the vast majority of bills my first year came from door knocking. You know, government transparency, bills that pertain to military families. So it was really kind of great to be able to pass things that literally the year before you were talking at the door with somebody about. So for me, I wouldn't say easy transition, but I felt that I was more on point because I did have that background and I understood how to read state statute and what it meant and how to find things. And I was really very lucky that way.
Okay, so then the next question is, why a run for governor and why now, Senator Blood?
You know, it was never on my radar. It really wasn't. Being a state senator most definitely was. But by the time the 9th person filed for office, it was clear to me that they were all playing on the same playbook. There's this us versus them narrative that is just driving me insane. The Nebraska that I grew up in, we didn't care if you were a Democrat or a Republican, we cared that you could do the job and you were qualified to do it well. But what we get is what I call smoke and mirrors. I want you to be concerned about these pretend problems that really don't pertain to the everyday Nebraskan. Because if I do that, I never have to solve the real problems that affect you and I on a daily basis. And this rhetoric and this pandering drove me insane, and nobody had solutions. Not once have I heard real solutions out of those 9 candidates, in my personal opinion. And as you just heard on the video, I decided I wanted to be the adult in the room, that I wanted somebody to step up and say, first of all, this us versus them narrative has to stop. Let's move the needle back to where it was at 20, 30 years ago, where we cared about the policy and the people, not politics and party. And let's show folks that you can run a campaign without going dirty, which I've done 4 times already, but I think it's more important statewide, even more so now. And that we don't have to use these labels, this progressive and extreme right or Republican or Democrat. Gosh, you're a Nebraskan, I'm a Nebraskan, we're friends, we're neighbors. Why do we have to keep labeling people? So for me, I want to get back to the Nebraska that I love. And I feel that I plan on winning because I see a pathway to success. But even if I didn't win, maybe we can move the needle a little bit and let people know that there are folks that still want to do it in a way that is the Nebraska way.
Okay, so speaking of the Nebraska way, we're going to put up some photos here of you and your, I'll call them opponents, but how would you introduce these 2 gentlemen without using, some of the words that you took, Republican, Democrat?
Yeah, easy.
What would you say about them?
So Mr. Zimmerman, I'd say that he's got a very memorable marketing campaign, Back the Beard. I give him props for that. I thought that was really a fun way to promote yourself. And I have to say with Mr. Pillen, I have 10 grandchildren, and so I identify when a person loves their family, and good on him. He clearly has a family that he loves, and his grandchildren are adorable. But beyond that, I'm not going to speak on behalf of their politics because I'm not them, and we're all in this for the same reason, and I wish them luck.
Yeah, we did invite Jim Pillen to join you here on set. The same way we reached out to you, and I need to let viewers know that we did not hear anything back. So I at least wanted to put up the photographs so that folks would kind of have a visual there, right? But let's go on to your running mate. We're going to go ahead and put that photo up now and tell us all about this man.
You know, I got to be honest, from the moment I announced, I had a checklist. And I wanted to make sure that whoever I picked was as honest as the day is long, that had a really good grasp when it came to ag, because you know, we're experiencing a drought and avian flu and supply chain issues, and we're not prepared for any of this. I want to make sure that whoever I have is going to have the same focus, because ag drives our economy, but it's also familiar with things that are going on in western Nebraska, eastern Nebraska. And I had to be able to get along with them. That he understood how the legislative system works, because whoever's lieutenant governor is the person who oversees what goes on every day in the legislature, and smart. So I had a really hard time finding somebody that like fit all the qualifications. You know, you might find somebody who's really good when it came to issues that pertain to eastern Nebraska, somebody maybe more informed about what's going on in western Nebraska, but it's hard to find somebody, you know, like me, born on a farm but raised my family in eastern Nebraska. So I have a pretty good idea of what goes on in all parts, be it farming or other parts of ag, like ranching and cattlemen. And Al is a cattleman, by the way. And I talked to him and he said yes. And the best thing about it is, like, we traveled over 1,000 miles in 3 days, going to like 9 different communities. Like, we travel a lot together and we get along great, which is, if you're locked in a car for 3 days, that's how you know if you get along with somebody or not, right? Yeah. And he's just a kind person, which I love. Like, there's no drama. It's just two folks getting along, getting stuff done. We both have a long-term vision for Nebraska, and I can't wait to get to work with him.
Well, and both obviously very self-aware. I mean, I would imagine that was quite a task, trying to figure out who to bring into this mix, right? That would be a compliment to you, somebody that you would be able to get along with, so that Nebraskans could see that, right?
You know, and this is, you don't see this a lot in races, but a lot of gubernatorial race, they like go through the party, or they go through the lobbyists, or they go through the special interest groups. Like, I didn't ask anybody to help me pick. Like, this was my pick, because ultimately, you know, when I become governor, the buck stops here. And yeah, Al's just a good person, and we actually got to know each other during the Mead, Nebraska issue, the Alt-N plant. We worked very close together on that issue, and he's great under pressure and just very well-rounded. We're just blessed to have him on this team. Okay, we're going to talk about your key issues in just a minute.
Sure. But before we do that, I want to kind of set the stage with something called toxic polarization. How would you explain that to someone?
You know, I always let people know that I'm actually considered an influencer in what's called the Listen First Project, which is a national project. People are sick and tired of this us versus them narrative that we just talked about. And so I always tell people that it's our job to extend grace. We need to listen to you. You and I can disagree on any issue, and that's okay. It is not my job to push my opinion down your throat, but it is my job to extend grace and listen to you, and then thank you for the dialogue. If I know where you're coming from and how you feel and maybe why you're angry, because we know there's a lot of anger with this toxic polarization, then I have power. The power to create effective change, the power to weave community, because chances are pretty good no one's really listened to you. They've just argued with you. And so if we can come together and we can talk about why we feel the way we feel and where we're coming from, we can then work together. And we still don't have to agree, but we can move forward from that. And Nebraska, again, used to be that way. But what the various parties have found out is that if we keep keeping people separated, we can control how people vote, right? It's very a puppet master thing if you think about it. So Nebraskans are really, in some ways, being controlled what they should think, what they should believe. We don't ever talk about issues anymore in campaigns. We just talk about what you should be voting against, not for. And so I'm not going to participate in it. I'm going to lead by example. Al's going to lead by example, and anybody that works on our campaign and will work for me as governor will lead by example. I'm just not going to put up with it. And people have to start putting their feet down. And I encourage people on social media, just don't let people tell you what they believe and why they believe it, and then thank them for the dialogue. You're never going to change their mind, and you don't have to. But I'm guessing that, 90% of the time you guys agree on other things. That's what you focus on. But it's one person at a time. We can't do it as a state. We have to do it one person at a time. And that's why the Listen First project is so great. It's international. It's thousands of, tens of thousands of people working together to create a better narrative.
Mm-hmm. You brought up an interesting point there, social media. So how is that playing into your political involvement, or how has it so far? What is its role really in helping you get from point A to point B, do you think?
I like social media for me, and I always have, because I like to be able, I do my own social media, which is really, I guess, unique. If somebody writes, it's actually me answering, not my staff. Even that as senator, I do my own social media. And I think it's good for branding what you believe, and it's definitely good for younger voters. I know a lot of people think Facebook is the end all, but really young voters aren't on Facebook, they're on Instagram, and they've come back to Twitter recently. But I like to do it for a couple of reasons. I like to brand what I believe. I also like to talk about Nebraska, like why Nebraska is so awesome. We just recently started doing that on my senator page. We're doing something called the Summer Series, and every day we highlight a different part of Nebraska that has something awesome about it. I think we've forgotten that we need to start talking about all the good things. This Nebraska, it's not for everyone silliness, not helpful. So, and then I also use it, we do clever tongue-in-cheek things, like we just did 2 videos about the campaign. Where you don't have to be serious all the time, so you're going to see a lot more of that because it was so toxic this last election cycle, the primary. People were just coming out negative against each other and doing the labels, and I'm just trying to bring a little humor to it. I take what I do very seriously, but that doesn't mean that we have to be jerks about it. So you're going to see, for me, some memorable humor. I know that we just did a TikTok post, and in less than 24 hours we had like 1,200 views, and so not bad for a grandma.
Yeah,
so,
not bad at all, I must say.
And I just do it on my iPad. We're not paying anybody to do it, and it's not meant to be a commercial, it's just meant to be fun.
Okay, very good. Well, let's get to your key issues.
Sure.
We are going to put up another graphic for our viewers.
Okay.
There are 4 key issues, and so let's just put that up for them, right? So, and then what I'd like you to do, Senator Blood, is just talk about each of these in terms of what you want viewers to take away from those points.
Sure, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, for those of us that remember Reader's Digest. So when I talk about prosperity for all Nebraskans, I think the 2 major points I'd want people to understand is that, first of all, we're going to tell everybody the big lie about property taxes. And the big lie about property taxes in Nebraska is that no matter what sexy legislation we bring forward, there will never be property tax relief until we stop unfunded, underfunded mandates and fully fund our schools. We have known for over 20 years that the reason our property taxes are high are unfunded and underfunded mandates. It goes back to Ben Nelson. We've had hearings, we've had bills, Senator Deb Fischer, Senator Justin Wayne, Senator Sue Crawford, Senator Carol Blood. We keep bringing it forward, and what we're hearing is, yeah, but then people won't know who gave them the break. If you notice, every 2 years there's this really, again, I'll say it again, sexy legislation where we're giving you back money that we should never have taken in the first place. And then what do people run on? They run on the fact that they gave you that tax relief. So I have to say, to me, my impression is that they don't really want to give you tax relief, because if they did, we could have done it 20 years ago. And it's a huge burden on our local government who, remember we talked about Dylan's role earlier, they only have so many tools in their toolbox. When we keep putting these mandates, tens of millions of dollars of mandates on local government, eventually they have to raise your property taxes because they can't keep plowing your snow and fixing your streets because we're putting undue burdens on them that we could stop doing. And there's a bigger explanation than that, but I know our time is limited, so I'll move to the next thing, which is We know 18 to 35-year-olds are going to be driving our economy. We have this generation where we're missing out on generational wealth. They don't have the same ability to grow their wealth that we do. And we know that young people are leaving Nebraska for better opportunities. That's the number one reason. It's not property taxes. They can't even afford to buy a house. So we need to make sure that we have good paying jobs with good benefits. I want to work on universal child care and affordable housing. And we've made inroads on the housing, but we can do better. Moving forward to infrastructure, we know that when it comes to ag and manufacturing, that people have to get from point A to point B. So our roads, our bridges, our rail, our air, all important. But beyond that, also what we own as a state. So you look at the Nebraska State Prison System, we've known, again, for over 20 years that we have prison overcrowding, and we do nothing literally about it except wanting to build more prisons. What our polling shows is that Nebraskans want people who commit crimes to be punished, but at the same token, almost that exact same percentage think that we're rehabilitating them, and we are not. I worked for the state prison system for 6 years, and I can tell you that when you don't rehabilitate, this person who will one day be your neighbor has nothing but time on their hands to learn how to be a better criminal when they're incarcerated. So when they jam out without any help, they don't come out rehabilitated, they come out being better criminals. And so we have to really work on things like problem-solving courts and making sure that there's programming while they're incarcerated to make sure that they are getting the rehabilitation, mental health help that they need, substance abuse help that they need, because ultimately, instead of spending $40,000 per inmate, we're spending half of that because we are cutting down on the expenses of having to put them back into prison. And if we can keep them out of prison because of the problem-solving courts, that's better for your tax dollars. You hear people say that that's not being tough on crime. It's actually the opposite of that. We're being tough on crime by making sure that they get rehabilitated and don't come out and commit worse crimes. So infrastructure is not just, again, our roads, our bridges, but also what we own. So I'm going to try and cover two things under each pillar because I know our time is limited. And then education. I believe in a K through 14 education. We have an immediate workforce challenge that we think we can fix, again, after the fact. We've known for 20 years that we were going to have a workforce shortage. If you read the newspaper, watched the news, you knew the baby boomers were going to be aging out. Truck drivers, nurses, healthcare professionals, teachers. And Nebraska really did very little. And now we're in a crisis and we're throwing ARPA funds and other funds at it, and it's not going to fix it. So if we can do a K through 14 education, that's one way that we can do something immediately, where if you're a high school graduate, you can get 2 years of community college for free, get a certification, get a 2-year degree, walk into a great job that has good pay and good benefits. You have disposable income, you can afford a house, you can provide for your family, and you don't have college debt. Now, we still have to embrace our 4-year degrees. I think that's really important, but that's not for everybody. And it's a big issue because a lot of kids cannot afford to pay for college and get deep in debt. And gosh, how do you start your life that deep in debt? It's tough. It's not like when we were growing up. And then we need to fully fund our schools. So I think that's really important as well. And then the fourth pillar is that everybody has the right to be well and feel safe. A lot of people don't know that the state of Nebraska literally defunded the police when we didn't fund our law enforcement training center. Our law enforcement training center, and this is how Nebraska budgets, and it drives me crazy. If we are struggling financially, they'll go to the departments and go, cut 4%, cut 6%. There's no planning. Law enforcement training center needed to hire new staff. They needed to upgrade their facilities. They were actually allocated the funds and asked not to spend those funds to keep the budget down. So what happened was we had long waiting lists of law enforcement that had been hired because, of course, the baby boomers were aging out. We were hiring younger law enforcement professionals. So they'd wait 3, 6, 9 months to get trained. It became such a crisis that Sarpy County put together its own training facility with the Sarpy County Sheriff's Department, the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, Bellevue, Papillion, and La Vista, because we couldn't wait any longer. And what happened in the more rural areas of Nebraska is they lost staffers because they went on to jobs that they could actually get to work and get paid. And so think about it, if you have 3 people in the sheriff's department for your entire county and 2 of them can't even come to calls, that affects your ability to be safe. So it's really important that we make sure that our law enforcement has the appropriate training that they need and the tools that they need to be effective. And that is part of that. But the other part is you have the right, I believe, to be well here in Nebraska. Nebraska really messed up, and facilities have closed as a result of that, where we didn't do a good job of our Medicaid reimbursements. We just stepped it up to the plate, and we raised those rates. But we had healthcare facilities, especially out west, that were struggling, and their doors literally closed down because between the pandemic and not being fully refunded that Medicaid funds, they had to close down. That means rural jobs were lost. That means that affects that local economy. But it also means that then those people have to come to more urban areas. Now, if you're in the Omaha metro area, you might wait 6 months to see a professional, especially a specialist, because the waiting list is so long because they're taking that extra burden. So we need to continue to put funds and training towards things like Grow Where You Are programs. You might be the receptionist at the hospital, or you might clean their rooms. Who better to recruit to maybe be a tech or a nurse than somebody who works in that building every single day? We can do the same with our teachers too, by the way, but which was another pillar. So we have opportunities to do better. I'm really concerned because we are world renowned when it comes to our epidemiology department, when it comes to the professionals that come here and get educated. We have to do better in Nebraska to keep them here in Nebraska.
So I need to ask you, because we have about a minute remaining. This
that
is
went
it.
fast.
So this is where we come to the close here. Talk to our viewers, and literally we have a minute, maybe a little less. Yes, a little less. What do you want them to know? How do you want to leave them today?
You know, if you're sick and tired of the same thing in history repeating itself over and over again, the question I ask is, why do you keep voting the same way? It's probably time for new blood in Nebraska. It's time for change.
Okay, we're talking with Senator Carol Blood today about the race for governor. I want to wish you very well. You've got a journey ahead of you. Good luck. I want to thank our students who are working so hard behind the scenes. And of course, to all of you for watching. Folks wanting more information on this program can go to electcarolblood.com, or you can call the senator directly at 402-517-1446. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
Coming up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Faded brass to a full.
There's a unique educational experience right here in Omaha. With access to top-rated programs, in-demand degrees, and a worldwide community of graduates, UNO prepares students for life, wherever it may lead. From Omaha to Italy to Uganda to Japan, Mavericks are working in communities around the globe. So where will a degree from UNO take you? UNO, access to exceptional, access to the world. Learn more at unomaha.edu.
It is the longest-running Omaha-based statewide television program on the air today. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt, producer and host of Consider This. Now in our 25th season, we wish to acknowledge those who have made this educational journey possible. Our guests, underwriters, student crews, the Knowledge Network, the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and of course, viewers just like you. Thank you for watching.